Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and we got some news today. Obviously, we've already reported on Ben Johnson heading to Chicago. But we have 3 interviews announced this week. These are the second round of interviews for the Jacksonville Jaguars. 3 candidates we know for sure are moving on, and please note, it says here, possibly more. If there are, I'll try to note that in the comments, or maybe we'll record another video about it. But for now, it is Buccaneers OC Liam Cohen, Raiders DC Patrick Graham, and former Jets head coach Robert Saleh. These guys are going to be interviewing between Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I know Cohen's going to be Wednesday, and then Graham and Saleh will go on Thursday and Friday. So, it's an interesting list, right? It just feels to me, honestly, like this is pretty clearly Liam Cohen at this point. I'd be shocked if the Jaguars don't get him. I think it would honestly take a situation very close to what happened the last time that we were interviewing a Bucs offensive coordinator, where he essentially says, hey, can I get my own GM? And Shad Khan tells him, no, you're a moron. I'm not hiring you anymore. And there you go. It's over, right? It just feels like something like that has to happen. And I don't know if that's going to be the case. It sounds like Cohen has been willing to work with Trent Baalke, which God help him if he does that. I hope it works out, but it's hard to really think that the 6 times is a charm at this point, and that's just something we're going to have to live with. But this is an interesting list of candidates. So you have Cohen, who we've talked about before, but he's been really good for the Bucs offense this year. Done a phenomenal job in the run game, helping Baker Mayfield to have another career year as well. And just feels like someone that, for the problems Jacksonville has and the type of person needs to bring in, it just feels like he's the perfect fit for this team. It's only 4 hours down the road as well. He'll be able to get up here pretty quick. And it just seems like Liam Cohen is the obvious name for the Jaguars. And I think throughout this whole cycle, you know, you could say it was Ben Johnson 1, Liam Cohen 2, but I mean, there's a lot of people, and myself kind of included here, where it's kind of a 1A, 1B thing, where there is a debate between the two, and I could understand if Jacksonville had preferred Cohen to Ben Johnson. Now, like I've said before, you know, my concern obviously is that a genuine preference for Cohen, or is that you preferring your GM and choosing whoever's going to work with him? Because that's what it more so feels like. And based off what we heard as well about why Johnson did not choose Jacksonville, it came down to Trent Baalke, which pisses me off, pisses a lot of fans off. It just is what it is at this point. But that would be my concern here. I think Cohen is a phenomenal hire, but, you know, are you doing it for the right reasons? And are you going to set him up for success having Trent Baalke here? You know, I would want a lot of restructuring this front office. I think you need an EVP in there. You need other people to have checks and balances, because this is going to end the exact same way. You're going to stick this team in purgatory until you ruin Trevor Lawrence. So something has to change. But talking about the other candidates, you know, Patrick Graham, I didn't talk about a whole lot the first time when we mentioned his name, because I had never heard of him, to be honest. I don't know all the coordinators around the NFL. He was not someone who was talked about a ton as a candidate, but I've watched some stuff on him. He seems like a good leader. Seems like he has his head on straight. He's from the Belichick tree as well, so you might like that. You might not as well. But he's had a very good defense for what the roster has been in Las Vegas. They've been able to overperform, and he's had a team that's been tough, right? It's not really a weak team in Las Vegas while he's been there. So I think those are things you like about Patrick Graham, but like your other defensive-minded head coaches or head coach candidates, you're going to ask at the end of the day, is this guy going to be able to assemble an effective offensive staff in Jacksonville? And I just don't know if that's the case. You know, that's kind of how I feel about all these defensive candidates. That's the scary part of it. And I feel like the most important thing for Jacksonville, you know, you obviously want to win, and that's top of your list, but right there, you need to make sure Trevor Lawrence has everything he needs to succeed. we're going into year 5. There are questions about who he is as a player and if he is really a franchise quarterback at this point. I know a lot of people want to say yes, but I really think that the verdict is still out there, and you need to do everything you can to help him out. And that's why I want to see an offensive-minded head coach come in here. So it's kind of the knock there, and then obviously the Raiders didn't have a good this year. We don't even know if they're going to retain Patrick Graham as their own defensive coordinator, so why would Jacksonville take him as a head coach? There's some questions like that I think you have answers to, but it's kind of an interesting one. But I will say this, got nothing personal against Patrick Graham. Seems like a cool guy. I just don't know if he'd be a top candidate for me. And then finally, Robert Saleh. This is one we mentioned just earlier today that seemed like a likely candidate for the Jaguars, although I do think Cohen is the clear favorite right now. Saleh kind of feels like the number 2, where he's been with the team before. The people here like him. He can sell them on that, and he's someone that I think would kind of fit what they want with working with Trent Baalke, which for God knows what reason is like the top priority of this coaching search. So you get all those things, and Saleh did a really good job with the Jets of building a formidable defense, given they had some issues down the road, especially with the run defense with that team. But they did have some really good picks in their time there, and they had some great defensive units. So I think Saleh could get a lot out of this defense that we have in Jacksonville, and it would ultimately be a question of what he can do on the offensive side of the ball. It's just, kind of like we talk about Patrick Graham, what have you done this year to wow me into thinking you're a head coach candidate? Because Patrick Graham, like we said, coming from one of the worst teams in the NFL this season, and Robert Saleh got fired. And he was not the problem with the Jets, very clearly. I mean, they went 2-3 with him and then finished, 4-13 or something crazy. So it's not like the Jets had problems just because of Robert Saleh. They have bigger issues there too. But Saleh didn't get the job done. And if you're going to have to ask the big question, what is he going to be able to do to help Trevor Lawrence? The resume is not there, right? You look at Zach Wilson, and he had no development in his career. This is my problem with this. I feel like you have to get someone who is going to elevate Trevor Lawrence. You cannot get this wrong again. If you get it wrong again, you're stuck with this guy for 2 or 3 years. We're talking about, okay, now we're going into year 8 of Trevor Lawrence, and he's the same guy. Do you want to be paying that $55 million a year now that the guarantees are about to end? I don't think so. That's the problem. You don't want to be in that kind of situation. But yeah, it's a very interesting list for the Jaguars. I think you have one very clear top candidate, and then you have other guys who, there's a discussion, but I don't think they answer the biggest questions that we should have. So we'll have to see if anyone else gets that second interview. I think we'll maybe have 1 or 2 more names get thrown on. One other thing to note as well, I believe the Rooney Rule has not been fully satisfied for the Jaguars. They have to get what I believe is 1 more in-person interview, and that should be satisfied with Patrick Graham, who I believe is interviewing on Thursday. You can double check that. I might have the date wrong, but it's either Thursday or Friday. So don't expect to hire right now. It's not going to happen today. It's probably not going to happen tomorrow. But once we get later in this week, that is when they'll have met the requirements to make a move. And, we'll see what Jacksonville does if they even rush this, because we've seen them in the past just kind of being lackadaisical, not caring about getting the stuff done, losing out on candidates because of it, and then, we hired Doug Peterson. We'll see what they do. But, yeah, so far, 3 candidates have advanced, and we'll see if any other names get added onto there. So with that said, want to shout out our channel members before we go. Premier Seer 904, Mr. Dolphin, Scrubber Ducky 500, and Brian Foster. Appreciate y'all supporting the channel. Let me know your thoughts about these candidates, who you prefer. If there's a name you feel like should advance that maybe has not yet. And we'll see you in the next one. So take it easy and go Jags.